I used to think delivering pizzas was the safest job I could have asked for. You drive around, you drop off the food, you get paid, you move on. Nothing more dangerous than a bad tip, or maybe a loose dog on the porch. But a few months ago, I learned that sometimes the house you pull up to isn't just another house. Sometimes the family waiting at the door isn't a family at all. It was late. Too late for the order to make sense. My manager called it in, said it was cash only, and said the customer insisted I deliver. The address was just outside town, past the stretch of highway where the streetlights give up and the forest starts pressing in. I remember thinking, fine, one last drop-off, then home. The house looked normal enough at first. Lights on, shadows moving inside. When the door opened, I froze. Standing there were people with my mother's face, my father's smile, even my little sister's nervous laugh. But their eyes were all wrong. I don't know why I didn't run then. Maybe because some part of me wanted to believe it was a trick. Maybe because they spoke in my family's voices, asking me to come inside. I shouldn't have. God, I shouldn't have. I haven't told anyone this before. Not my coworkers, not my family, not even the police. I couldn't. Who would believe me? Who would take me seriously if I walked into a station and said, "Hey, I just delivered a pizza to my parents," except it wasn't really them. They'd laugh me out of the building, or worse, they'd keep me for observation, run tests, ask questions I don't want to answer. That's why I'm telling you. I just need someone to listen. Someone outside my circle, someone who won't immediately tell me I'm crazy. You seem like the kind of person who's seen strange things too. Maybe you've had a night when the walls felt thinner than they should have been, or when a sound came from the corner of the room you knew was empty. Maybe you've stayed in a cabin in the woods before, where there was no signal, no one to call if things went wrong. Maybe you've sat awake through sleepless nights, hearing creepy noises you couldn't explain. If you have, then maybe you'll understand. I keep going over it in my head, wondering if I missed something obvious. A mask, some elaborate prank, a trick of the light. But every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. My father's exact smile, my mother's exact voice, my sister's exact nervous habit of chewing the inside of her lip. It wasn't just imitation, it was replication. Whoever they were, they knew my family in a way that wasn't possible. Promise me you won't try to find that house. Don't go looking for it. Don't search back roads or abandoned neighborhoods hoping to stumble across it. Because if you do, you won't come back the same. I didn't. I remember pulling up in my old beat-up Honda Civic, headlights bouncing off the tree line as I searched for the numbers on the mailbox. There was no GPS signal that far out, just a hand-scribbled address on the receipt. The woods pressed in so close, the road felt swallowed, and the deeper I drove, the quieter it became. No insects, no wind, just silence, like the world was holding its breath. I told myself it was normal for places that remote, but in my gut, I knew something was off. When the house came into view, my first thought was relief. It was big, with a porch light glowing warmly. It looked lived in, safe, familiar, and maybe that's why I didn't question it harder. I was tired, hungry, ready to end my shift. But when the door opened and they stood there, every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn around. And yet I didn't. Maybe you'd say curiosity got the better of me. Maybe you'd say fear froze me in place. But the truth, I think it was recognition. Some part of me believed I was home. I keep replaying that moment, like a broken record in my head. The way my sister's laugh carried across the threshold. The way my father's hand rested on my shoulder, heavy and warm. The way my mother's eyes held mine, like she was pleading with me to believe. It all felt so real, too real. That's why I can't sleep anymore. That's why every night I wake up drenched in sweat, hearing their voices just beyond the walls. I'll be lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, when I hear someone downstairs calling my name. Sometimes it's my dad's voice. Sometimes it's my mom's. Once, It was my sisters, whispering through the keyhole of my bedroom door. But when I get up to check, the house is empty. My real family is asleep. Do you understand now? Why did I need to tell you? Why did I need someone who might believe me? Because if I don't let this out, it's going to eat me alive. It's already started. The world looks the same on the surface, but something shifted for me that night. The pizza box felt heavier in my hands. The air in that house felt wrong, charged, like static clinging to my skin. And when I stepped back into the woods afterward, when I finally made it to my car, the silence followed me home. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. If you ever find yourself driving those back roads late at night, and you see a house glowing at the end of the dark, don't stop. Don't knock on the door. Don't answer the voices that sound too much like the ones you love. Because I did, and I don't think I ever really came back. When I tell you about the house, I want you to picture it exactly the way it looked to me that night. That's important, because memory can play tricks, and mine certainly has since then. But some details are carved into me like scars. It wasn't a cabin in the woods, at least not in the way people usually mean. It wasn't a cute little log place with flower boxes, or some vacation getaway meant for summer weekends. No, this house was older, larger. Its wood siding was gray and splintered, weather-beaten like it had been standing for 100 years too long. The porch leaned forward, sagging in the middle, like the house was bowing under the weight of something pressing from the inside. The front door was painted red, but the paint had peeled so badly that only streaks remained. The porch light glowed a dim amber, too weak for the shadows it was supposed to push back. And those shadows seemed thicker than they should have been. I remember looking up at the windows and seeing curtains pulled tight, not a single glimpse of life inside. But I could feel eyes on me, even before the door opened. That sensations, the sense of being watched, it didn't let go the entire time I was there. I thought maybe it was just nerves. Delivery drivers tell themselves all kinds of things on late-night runs. Creepy neighborhoods, strange customers, you get used to it. But this wasn't nerves. This was pressure, a weight, invisible, pressing down on me from the tree line, from the house itself. Later, I found out there were rumors about that road, that people in town whispered about a property out past the last gas station, a place locals avoided. They said GPS didn't work out there, and sometimes the road itself seemed to twist back on itself, like it didn't want you to leave. I didn't know any of that when I pulled up. I was just trying to deliver a pizza and clock out. But looking back, the signs were there. When I cut the engine, I noticed the forest around the house was dead quiet. No crickets, no owls, no rustle of leaves. Even in winter, even in the middle of nowhere, there's usually some sound. But here, nothing. The silence was so deep it felt unnatural, like the woods were holding their breath, waiting. I grabbed the pizza from the passenger seat and glanced at the dashboard clock. The glowing digits flickered, then froze. 9:13. I tapped the glass, but nothing changed. When I pulled my phone from my pocket to check, the screen was black. Not dead, not dimly black. It wouldn't power on at all. I told myself it was fine. Cars glitch, phones die. But some part of me already knew it wasn't a coincidence. Something about this place was eating the normal rules alive. I walked up the porch steps, each one creaking under my weight like it hadn't been stepped on in years. I knocked on the door, and while I waited, I caught my reflection in the glass pane beside it. Only it didn't look right. My reflection blinked slower than me. The corners of its mouth twitched, like it was about to smile. I looked away so fast I nearly dropped the pizza, and then the door opened. You'd think I'd feel relieved, seeing people standing there, a family, familiar faces. But it was the opposite, because the people I saw on that porch weren't strangers. They were my family, my mom, my dad, my sister. Only they couldn't be. My family was 40 minutes away, sitting at home, probably watching TV. Yet, there they were, framed in the amber porch light, smiling at me like they'd been waiting all night, before I could even process it. My dad, at least, the thing that wore his face, reached out and clapped a hand on my shoulder. The weight of it was heavy, real. His voice was deep and warm, exactly as I remembered. "You made it," he said. My mom's eyes glistened, as if she might cry. My sister giggled, chewing the inside of her lip the way she always did when she was nervous. Every detail, every movement, every breath was them, and that was the worst part. It wasn't some uncanny imitation. It wasn't a mask. It was perfect. I should have turned and run, but instead, I stepped inside. The air was stale, like the house hadn't been opened in years. Dust clung to the light fixtures, and the wallpaper peeled in curling strips. The furniture was mismatched, faded with age, but sitting around that table, set for dinner, was my family. Plates ready, glasses filled, like they were waiting for me to come home. I walked deeper into that house, trying not to notice the way every clock on the walls had stopped at 9:13, trying not to notice the photographs in the frames, which showed my family but always slightly wrong. My sister with an extra H. Hand on her shoulder. My father was standing in front of a door that wasn't in our real house. My mother smiled too wide, her teeth just a little too sharp. The house felt alive. I don't mean creaking wood or drafts in the walls. I mean it was breathing, slow, steady, beneath the floorboards. Every time I set the pizza box down, the table shivered like it was part of a living thing. And through it all, the eyes on me never left. My reflection in the dark window watched me with a smile I didn't wear. The shadows in the hallway shifted as if something moved just out of sight. My family, if that's what you can call them, kept looking at me, too, with this strange hunger, not for food. For me, that was the setup. That was the house. And even now, when I think back on it, I realize I was never meant to leave once I crossed that threshold. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just a strange dream. Maybe I'd fallen asleep in my car, exhausted from deliveries. Maybe my mind had conjured this whole thing, my family's faces, the stopped clocks, the too wide smiles. But when I woke or thought I woke, I was still inside the house. Still sitting at that table, the uneaten pizza box resting between us like an offering. My father, the thing wearing his face, spoke softly, asking about my night, asking if I was tired, if I wanted to rest. His words were kind, but his tone didn't match. It was almost rehearsed, like he was reading from a script he only half understood. My mother's hand brushed mine across the table, cool to the touch, colder than it should have been. My sister hummed under her breath, a tune I almost recognized but couldn't place. I told myself I just needed to leave. I stood, mumbling about another delivery, about work waiting. But when I turned toward the door, it was already shut, locked. I know I hadn't closed it. I twisted the knob. The wood felt warmer than it should have, like the door itself was pulsing faintly, alive beneath my hand. "Stay," my sister whispered. Her voice was light, playful, but her eyes stayed fixed on mine, unblinking. That night, if it was night, was the first time I heard the knocking. It came long after they had guided me to one of the upstairs rooms, urging me to rest. The bed sagged in the middle, the sheets smelling faintly of mildew, but exhaustion pressed me down like lead. I drifted in and out, my body sinking while my mind floated above. And then, knock, knock. The sound came from inside the walls, not at the door, not at the window from within. The hollow thud vibrated through the wooden panels, rhythmic, deliberate. 3 slow knocks, followed by silence so heavy I could hear my own pulse in my ears. I tried to ignore it. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, shut my eyes tight, and willed myself to sleep. But the silence stretched, taut like a rope, ready to snap. Then knock, knock. Knock dot. This time, closer. right behind the headboard. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I must have dozed, though, because I woke up gasping from a dream. In it, I was standing in the living room downstairs, staring into the mirror above the fireplace. My reflection smiled at me. Only in the dream, it stepped out, crawled through the glass like it wasn't even there. Its fingers wrapped around my throat, then I woke, choking on air. The strange part wasn't the dream. It was that when I staggered downstairs, drawn by something I couldn't explain, I found the mirror, and there were fresh handprints smeared across the inside of the glass. The second night, the disturbances grew bolder. The doors wouldn't stay closed. I'd shut one in the bathroom, the closet, the hallway, and, minutes later, I'd hear the soft, deliberate creak of hinges. Turn around, and the door would be yawning open, dark beyond. I tested it. I slammed the bedroom door, turned the lock, braced a chair beneath the handle. I sat, staring, daring it to move. Hours passed. My eyelids drooped. And just as I started to drift, the chair groaned, sliding inch by inch across the floor. The lock clicked. The door opened, and there was nothing on the other side. Nothing but darkness, thick as smoke. By the third night, I couldn't tell where dreams ended and waking began. Sleep brought whispers, a soft chorus of voices just at the edge of hearing, weaving through my mind. Sometimes they sounded like my family, sometimes strangers, sometimes even my own voice repeating words I hadn't yet spoken. But when I woke, the whispers didn't stop. They bled into the house, into the walls, echoing faintly through the vents. I pressed my ear to the floorboards, and I swear I heard breathing beneath me. Slow, steady, inhumanly deep. It wasn't just sound anymore. The house moved. Furniture shifted when I wasn't looking. Chairs scraped across the floorboards. Tables rotated. Rugs bunched in ways they hadn't before. I'd leave the pizza box on the counter, only to find it later in the living room, open, a single slice missing, and always, the eyes. My family sat in the living room most of the time, watching television that played nothing but static. Their faces, lit by that pale glow. They turned to me whenever I passed, smiling faintly, too faintly, like they were waiting for me to finally sit down, to finally give in. One evening, I found them standing in the hallway instead, perfectly still. My father at the end, my mother halfway down, my sister closest. Each door along the hall stood open, though I knew I had shut them. And as I walked past, trying not to look, they whispered in unison, "You belong here." I ran. I don't even remember reaching the stairs, but suddenly I was outside, gasping for air under the heavy silence of the woods. The trees loomed, bare branches tangled like veins. My car sat where I left it, headlights dimly reflecting the porch light. I bolted for it, keys shaking in my hand, only to find the driver's side door already open, waiting. Inside, the dashboard clock still read 9:13. That's when I heard it, the knocking. Not from the house this time, but from inside the car, from the trunk. I staggered back, heart hammering, breath ragged. The knocking grew louder, faster, as if something inside was desperate to be let out. My first thought was to run, but where? The forest stretched in every direction, thick and endless, no sign of a road or town. When I looked back at the house, my family stood on the porch, smiling, beckoning me in. The knocking stopped the moment I turned toward them. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the floor of the upstairs room, back against the bed frame, staring at the door as it inched open and closed, without sound. And somewhere, faintly, beneath the floorboards, something laughed. The house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it wanted me to stay. I don't know what finally drove me to search the house. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was desperation, or maybe some part of me knew that the answers were already here, buried in the walls, waiting to be found. It started with scratching. The sound came from beneath the bed one night. Faint at first, like nails dragging along wood. I pressed my ear to the floorboards, heart pounding, and heard it again scrape, scrape, scrape. Not random. It was deliberate, like something carving. I pulled the bed aside, ignoring how the sheets seemed damp, as though they'd been rained on. My fingers dug at the wood until I found the seam of a loose plank. When I pried it free, the stench hit me first: mold, rot, and something coppery, metallic. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to keep going, prying up another board, then another. Beneath the floor was a cavity, narrow and suffocating, no bigger than a crawlspace, and inside it lay a bundle of cloth, yellowed and brittle with age. My hands shook as I unwrapped it, revealing an old leather journal. The cover was cracked, the pages warped from moisture, but the ink was still legible. It wasn't just a journal, it was a record. Notes, drawings, warnings, scrawled in frantic handwriting. The first entry dated back to 1957. We found it in the woods, imitating us. At first, it was small, barely the shape of a child. But every day, it watched. Every day, it learned. By the time we realized it could speak, it already knew our names. My skin crawled as I flipped through more pages. Each one documented strange encounters. Families lured inside, guests who never left. The creature, whatever it was, growing stronger, smarter, until it could wear their faces perfectly. One page had a drawing, a family of 4, sitting at a dinner table, their faces nothing but smudges of ink. Beneath it, a single line written in shaking hand. Don't eat with them. Don't answer when they knock. Don't look in the mirror. I froze, remembering the mirror above the fireplace, the way my reflection had smiled on its own. Another entry, later, was even worse. The house is its mouth. Every door, every window the forest bends to keep you here. It feeds on recognition, on memory. If it wears you long enough, the real you is gone. The words blurred as my hands trembled. Recognition, that was the word. Because the more time I spent here, the harder it was to separate what was real from what was imitation. My family's faces didn't look wrong anymore. They looked familiar, comforting, even. I slammed the journal shut, heart racing. That's when I noticed the carvings on the underside of the floorboards. Barely visible in the dark, someone had scratched words into the wood. Not with a knife, these looked gouged by fingernails. If you see yourself run, the breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, clutching the journal, when I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, steady, deliberate. The door creaked open. My mother stood there, or what looked like her. She tilted her head, eyes catching the light in a way that made them seem too reflective. "You shouldn't read old things," she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her lips didn't move right. The words dragged, delayed, like sound badly dubbed over a video. I shoved the journal behind me. "What is this place?" I demanded, though my voice broke. She didn't answer. She just smiled, and in the dim light, I saw something twitch beneath her skin, like her face was a mask that didn't quite fit. I ran. I tore down the stairs. The journal clutched in my hand, nearly tripping as the house groaned around me. The walls pulsed faintly, as though veins ran through the wood. Every mirror I passed caught my reflection half a second too late. In one of them, I saw myself still standing, watching, even as I sprinted past. I didn't stop until I reached the basement door. It stood slightly ajar, though I knew it had been closed before. The air wafting up was damp, fetid, wrong, and yet I went down. The stairs groaned under my weight, dust rising with each step. My phone flashlight flickered weakly, barely pushing back the dark. The basement was larger than it should have been, its walls stretching farther than the footprint of the house. And carved into those walls, in dozens of overlapping hands, were words. "It wears you. It eats time. Don't answer when they knock." My light caught something in the far corner, a shape, hunched and shifting. My heart stopped. It was me, Dot. Or rather, it was something wearing me. It crouched in the shadows, hands pressed against its face like clay, shaping, molding, and as it looked up, its features slid into place, bone cracking, skin stretching, until I was staring at my own face. My own eyes? It smiled. "Delivery's here," it said in my voice. I staggered back, the journal slipping from my hands. The thing rose slowly, its limbs just a little too long, its movements too fluid, as though it hadn't fully figured out how to be me yet. But it was close. Too close. The basement filled with whispers, overlapping, all in my voice, all repeating fragments of my life. My name, my childhood memories, my secrets. Things I'd never told anyone. The walls throbbed, the words carved into them shifting as though they were alive. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a house. It was a trap, a lure. It had been here for decades, maybe longer, wearing families, drawing in strangers, learning, feeding, and now it has chosen me. I stumbled up the stairs, 2 at a time, as the whispers followed. My family's faces were waiting at the top, blocking the way. Their smiles stretched impossibly wide now, splitting their cheeks. "Stay," they said together. "Stay, and we'll be whole." I shoved past them, feeling their cold hands graze my skin, tugging, pulling. I don't remember how I got back to the bedroom, only that I slammed the door and wedged the dresser against it. The journal lay open on the floor where I'd dropped it. The last entry was smeared, nearly illegible, but I could just make out the words, "It doesn't want you to leave. Not because you can't bet, because if you try, it will follow." The knocking started again. Not from the door, not from the walls this time, from the inside of the room, from the closet. I don't know how long I sat there, listening, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the closet door as it rattled against the frame. The journal's warnings swirled in my head, repeating, twisting. Don't answer. Don't eat with them. Don't look in the mirror. But it was too late. I'd already done all of it. I don't remember making the choice to run. One moment I was pressed against the bedroom wall, clutching the journal, listening to the thing inside the closet scrape at the door. The next, I was outside, the cold night air filling my lungs like water after nearly drowning. The house loomed behind me, its windows glowing faintly, though no lights were on. They looked like eyes, watching, waiting. I sprinted into the forest, the ground soft and wet beneath my shoes, branches clawing at my arms and face. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. Every instinct told me that if I glanced over my shoulder so much, it would be there wearing me, calling me, pulling me back inside. The trees closed in fast, thicker than they had been before. No matter which direction I ran, the path bent subtly, as though the forest itself shifted to keep me circling. I tried to mark trees with a broken stick, scratching X's into bark. But after 10 minutes, I found the same X staring back at me, deeper now, like someone else had carved it first. My phone had no signal, just as it hadn't since I arrived. But now it showed something worse. The time blinked and reset every few minutes. Las 12:07. Las 12:07, 12:07. I'd been frozen in that single moment since the knocking began. I don't know how long I ran before I saw the cabin again. Not mine. Not exactly. This one was smaller, older, its wood warped and gray with age. But it was the same shape, the same porch, the same front steps. I staggered back, nearly tripping. My chest heaved, my vision tunneling. There was no way it should have been here, and yet the door creaked open. I could see my family inside, or what I thought was my family. They were sitting at the table, waiting patiently, bowls of soup steaming in front of them. My mother lifted her head, smiling warmly, and for the briefest second, I almost forgot the journal, the warnings, the scratches beneath the bed. For the briefest second, it felt safe. Then my own face looked out from the window beside hers. I screamed. stumbling backward, forcing myself to run again. The forest swallowed me whole, branches whipping, shadows stretching. I didn't stop until my legs gave out and I collapsed against a tree. The journal was still clutched to my chest, damp with sweat. I flipped it open, searching desperately for some hint of escape, some instruction I'd missed. Near the back, smeared and faint, I found a final warning. The way out is not a way. The way out is through. I didn't understand it. Maybe I didn't want to, because the forest wasn't letting me go. Every time I ran, I ended up back at the cabin. Sometimes it looked old. Sometimes it looked new. Once, it looked burned to ash, smoke still curling from the blackened beams. But always it was there, and each time they were waiting inside. My family, my own face. On the fourth loop, I broke. I stumbled up the porch steps, my body moving without my mind's permission. The door opened before I touched it. The smell of food wafted out, warm and inviting, masking the copper rot that lingered beneath. My family looked up at me. Their smiles were wide, teeth too many, eyes shining too bright. And still I wanted to step inside. "You're tired," my father said gently. His voice was soft, like a lullaby. "Sit, eat, stay." My reflection stood behind him, grinning with a familiarity that turned my stomach. I dropped the journal onto the table. The pages fell open to the drawing of the faceless family. The ink seemed darker now, fresher, like it had been drawn just minutes before. And then I saw a new figure added at the edge of the table. One that hadn't been there before. One that looked like me. The house groaned. The walls pulsed. The floor shifted under my feet like muscle tightening around bone. I staggered back toward the door, choking on my own breath. "No," I whispered. "No, you're not mine. You're not them." Their smiles faltered for the first time. My reflection tilted its head, curious, like a child studying an insect. Then it whispered in my voice, "But you'll be." I ran again. I don't know if it was into the forest or deeper into the house. The walls folded in on themselves, the doors leading to rooms that hadn't existed before. Mirrors reflecting angles that didn't belong to me. Time bled, stretched. I don't know how long I've been here. Sometimes I think I escaped. I'll wake up on the roadside, headlights flashing, a stranger pulling over to ask if I'm okay. I'll try to speak, but the words come out wrong, delayed, like my mouth isn't fully mine anymore. Other times I'll blink and I'm back in the cabin, sitting at the table, the soup steaming in front of me. My family is smiling. My reflection nodded. Maybe the journal was right. The way out isn't a way. The way out is through. And maybe I've already gone through. Maybe that's why, when I look in the mirror now, sometimes my reflection lingers just a little too long. Maybe that's why when I pass strangers on the street, I catch them smiling with my family's faces. Maybe I never left at all. I haven't been able to sleep since that night. Not really. Not the kind of sleep where your body sinks deep and your mind drifts into safety. No, my nights are shallow, restless things. I close my eyes, and I feel the cabin waiting behind them. I hear the knock that never came from any door. I see my family's faces, not as they were, but as they became. That's why I'm telling you this. Not because I think it will make sense, or because I think it will save me, but because you sound like someone who's seen strange things too. Someone who's walked through shadows and come back with a little less of yourself than you started with. I need someone like that to hear me, to understand. I still hear it every night. The scrape of something pulling itself closer. The faint echo of my own voice, repeating words I never said. Sometimes, when I wake up sweating and gasping in the dark, I swear I can hear silverware clinking against bowls. Like a family still waiting for me at that table. I thought leaving would end it. That if I just ran far enough, put enough miles between myself and that house, I'd shake it off like a bad dream. But dreams don't follow you. They don't call your name in your own voice. They don't sit behind your reflection, smiling. until you notice the delay when it finally moves. Do you want to know the worst part? Sometimes I want to go back. Not because I'm brave, not because I want answers, but because there's something in that house that feels inevitable, like I've been marked, drawn into a story that was written long before me. Maybe going back would just mean finally stopping the waiting. I tell myself that's not true, that I can fight it, ignore it, live my life like nothing ever happened. But then I'll be standing in line at the grocery store or walking past a restaurant window, and I'll see them. My mother's smile, my father's eyes, my reflection smirks, just for a split second, in the faces of strangers. And I know it's still with me. If you ever find that place, burn it. Don't stay. Don't listen to the voices. Don't open the door. Don't look too long into the windows. Whatever's inside, whatever wears the faces of the people you love, it doesn't let go. Not really. I haven't told anyone this before. I can't. Who would believe me? If I went to the police, they'd laugh. If I told my friends, they'd tell me I was exhausted, grieving, losing my grip. Maybe they'd be right, but you're listening, and that's all I need. Just someone to hear it. So I'm not carrying this thing alone. Promise me something. Promise me you won't try to find it. Not out of curiosity, not out of pity for me, not even to prove I'm lying. Because if you do, you won't come back the same. You'll sit at that table too. And one day you'll start seeing your family's faces where they don't belong. And when that happens, when you can't tell the difference anymore, you'll understand why I can't sleep. Why I whisper this story like a confession, hoping it buys me one more night before the cabin calls me home. I don't know how much longer I can resist it. Now that you've heard everything, I have to ask you something. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain, something that felt wrong, but wore the face of something familiar? Maybe you caught it out of the corner of your eye. Maybe it was in a dream that clung to you long after you woke up. Or maybe you saw someone you loved smile, but for just a second, you knew it wasn't really them. If you have, don't keep it to yourself. Tell me, write it down below. I read every single story, every whisper, every confession. It helps to know I'm not the only one. It helps to know I'm not going mad. But don't read them alone. Not at night. Not when the house is quiet and every creak feels like a footstep on the stairs. Because sometimes, I think those things, the ones that wear our faces, listen to. And if they hear their secrets spoken out loud, they might come looking for you, the way they came looking for me. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because I know what happens when you ignore the signs. When you think it's just in your head. I thought that once. I thought I was safe, because the people around me still smiled, still laughed, still looked like my family. Until the night they did. So share your story. Whisper it into the comments like you're whispering it into the dark. Maybe it'll keep the shadows at bay. Maybe it'll remind you you're not alone. Just promise me one thing. Don't ever go looking for the house I told you about. Don't follow the trail I walked, because if you do, you'll understand too late. You'll open the door, and you'll see them sitting there, waiting for you, smiling with faces that aren't theirs anymore. And when that happens, you'll never be able to look at your family the same way again.